Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that might be a little hard for some people to listen to. It's a very personal one, so I hope that nobody finds this like triggering in any way. But in case there is anybody, I just want to say that I understand, and it was for me for a little bit, to be honest. And it is why I think that purity culture is the worst ideology to ever come into existence, and how much it has actually affected us as a society. So let's just jump right in. Okay, for starters, the biggest and most important thing is I think that there is an inherent misogynistic view that immediately gets taken in by the person who does partake in purity culture. And women are not exempt. We all know what internalized misogyny is, and I think that women who subscribe to the beliefs and practices of purity culture are the number one people who are the internal misogynistic people that we all can't stand. So it also causes you to become like this horrible pick-me, because again, there is that internalized misogyny. So it's kind of like this way where you look down on all women who don't believe in the same things in terms of being pure. And what is being pure? That's the crazy part about it to me, is what the hell does pure mean? And it will be very shocking to me about how many people will think like, oh, you lose value in your humanity if you engage in a lot of like activity with men. It's specifically women engaging in activity with men. So that's the other part about it that's like very interesting. I actually saw this TikTok about this girl. She was talking about how she thinks that when men hate on women who are not subscribing to the whole purity culture thing, where you don't like, you kind of are more free, they talk about how a woman loses value when she's with a lot of men. And her take on it was that that's actually men's own internalized misogyny against themselves, because she was like, why is it that we lose value for interacting with you guys, but when a guy has a lot of experiences with a woman, he actually gains value? And I just thought that was interesting. I'm not saying anything with that, but I'm just saying I think that's a very interesting perspective, and I could definitely see that. So that's number one. Number two, I think that when people who have kind of grown up in a family or in a household where purity culture is very prevalent. So me, for example, I personally grew up in a very conservative, traditional household where it did really fall into the category of like partaking in purity culture, because like the concept of a boyfriend was like you would get like by your parents. So I grew up with that, and for me, it made me a very slow, like late bloomer. And a lot of people like, you know, that grew up in a similar way to me were even later bloomers, right? So what happens with that is like, yes, on one hand, there is good things about it. I'm not saying that nothing about it is good. I do think that it is important to teach your daughters and your sons how to be careful like in relationships and in dating, but I don't think that it's good to weaponize it. And I think that that's what happens with purity culture. It gets weaponized. There's no caution with it. It's just weaponized. And it's like there's this shame that goes along with it just for like associating with somebody of the opposite gender, which I think is just diabolical. Again, so I think that there are some little good things that come with it, and it is that you are a lot less likely to put yourself in very irresponsible situations. So like teenage pregnancy is kind of less likely, because like, you know, you're thinking about getting attacked by your parents, which is not a good thing, but like, you know what I'm trying to say. There is some things that it saves you from, right? At least that's what I told myself to really cope with it. So I don't know if everybody's going to share that same view, but that's just kind of how I felt. There was definitely good things that came out of it, where I wasn't really just constantly giving my heart and my body and attention to a bunch of different people. So that did save me from a lot of like fuckboy, like getting my time wasted. But what it did create is a complete lack of knowledge and a complete lack of experience, to where it could have very easily been detrimental to me specifically, but I have seen it become very detrimental to other people. The reason why I'm so against purity culture is because I think that it really makes it easy for girls to fall into very toxic and potentially abusive relationships. So, and the reason is because you don't have enough dating experience. So it's easy for a man to hear that you don't have any dating experience and he's the first and this and that. So what does he do? He's like, oh, she doesn't actually really know what normal relationships may look like. So it's easier for him to kind of manipulate and kind of mold you into the way that he wants you to be. And you won't really think anything is wrong with that because you don't have anything to compare it to. And that's my problem with this. And especially in households, the reason why, because, you might be thinking, well, like if she's got a good relationship with her dad, well, maybe that's like her example. But a lot of times in households where purity culture is like very, very enforced, a lot of times those girls don't actually have the best relationship with their fathers because it's so strict. There is not that friendly at home, like we can engage in discussion and I can kind of like pass on some wisdom to you type of relationships. I'm not saying that those don't exist, but typically that's what I notice. That's what I notice in a lot of cases, like with like girls who grew up in a household like that. Their dads are not a good example. And in fact, their dads tend to be abusive as well. So they don't really see this guy who could potentially be abusive to them is like this crazy red flag because it's kind of all they know. And now, they, with the added factor of they don't have prior relationship experience, it really is all they know. So it's super easy for guys to get away with it. So I want to tell a little bit of a personal story. So for me, when I was a teenager, I was like 16 or 17. I can't remember. Pray that my parents don't see this because yeah. So I started dating this guy. And this guy was, from a different background than me. And he, like, when he started to realize, like, how innocent, and I mean genuinely innocent, because, like I said, I came from a household where purity culture was huge. He really took advantage of that, right? Now, luckily for me, I did not let it get to the point where he ever was able to, like, put his hands on me or anything like that. But I was lucky in the sense that I did not really grow up loving boys, right? Like I did not have this idea that I cared so much to be with a guy that it didn't really matter what happened. I was still very, very picky. I still had like really like high expectations for what I thought like a man should be like. So for me, I didn't have to have prior dating experience to recognize like, oh my God, like this guy that I'm with right now, he's actually very emotionally and mentally abusive. And he 100% was. And I was able to leave that relationship before it could get any further. You get what I'm saying? This was the type of guy who, when I did try to end our relationship multiple times, I was a teenager and he was a few years older than me. He would threaten to delete himself, I guess, as a threat to get me to stay. And, at 16, like, how do you, like, respond to that? So that's what I'm talking about when I say he was very mentally, like, and emotionally, like, manipulative. And imagine, I could have easily, if I really was desperate to be in a relationship or desperate to, like, run away from my situation, thankfully, I am one of the people who did grow up in a household where purity culture was a big thing. But, like, my parents were not abusive. Like, I got along with my dad. So thank God for that, right? But imagine if I didn't, the outcome could have been really different. I also was really close to my siblings. I had close friends. So I had people to lean on to where I could recognize that these patterns of behavior were so abnormal and so damaging that I knew that I had to get out. But imagine if I didn't have any of those things. Imagine if I had brothers that were like horribly controlling or a dad who was horribly controlling. That could have gone south really easily, and I could definitely tell that's a direction that he was trying to take it. So when you realize this, it kind of makes sense why a lot of girls actually do end up getting stuck in abusive relationships, because they don't know what healthy love is a lot of the time. They think that it's normal to kind of have like strings pulled, like this push and pull, right? Like when you're on good behavior, you get love, because you don't know what, like, you know what I mean? Especially like usually people who grew up in purity culture households, it's because a lot of the times those people tend to come from very religious families. And what do religious families do? Or sorry, take that back. What does religion do? Religion is, in my opinion, feels extremely conditional. Everybody's going to say that their religion is unconditional. And, you know, if that's what you believe, that's awesome. And I love that for you. But in my personal opinion, I find religion to be very conditional. And so when households are very religious, I notice that they take on that very conditional feel. So there's always a fear of what you can say in the house. You know what I mean? And that same habit that you've built up gets carried out into everyday society. And I think that it really sets us back. It makes us unsure of ourselves. It makes us uncomfortable to stand up for ourselves and to actually speak our minds, because in very strict religious households, there is a, you know, you can't even really think for yourself. You can't question things, because if you do, then you're bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's very conditional. You do this, you're good. You do this, you're bad. So we take those things. All those things that we have grown up with, like in our childhood, that really makes this imprint on us, and we carry that with us into society. So a lot of the times, right, we see it happen all the time. So if you were abused, a lot of the times you become an abuser. If you were abused, you stay in this cycle where you constantly attract people who are also abusive, because our brains don't really know how to break habits very easily. It's really hard to recognize a pattern. It takes a lot of shadow work, and it takes a lot of uncomfortable things, and not a lot of people are willing to do it, or even have the capacity to realize like exactly what's going on. It's hard to realize for a lot of people that, oh, I can actually break this cycle. I can break this pattern, because we're so used to repeating what we know, and what we know a lot of the times is not actually good for us. And then that's why you fall into a lot of people who self-sabotage their good relationships. When things are going well, they don't know how to handle that, because they don't know what something good actually is. So they're like, this is not familiar to me. That doesn't bring me peace, because even if something is toxic, so long as it's familiar, it brings a sense of peace. And that's what I think purity culture really breeds in a person. It causes them to stay stuck in this cycle where they hate themselves, and where they look down at other people who are living a more free life. You know, if you want to call it free, in my opinion, I think that not subscribing to purity culture is a free life. But it keeps them in this loop where they're constantly miserable. So it just makes you generally unhappy, and it makes it very easy to get stuck in a very toxic, not happy relationship. And a lot of the times, people who do subscribe to purity culture have that thing of like, well, everything is the woman's fault. So if she is in an abusive, horrible situation, well, I can't leave, because then it'll be my fault. And they don't, it's like who taught us this? Like, who invented this? It's this self-hating, self-destructive view that I cannot get behind, and I don't understand why so many women even subscribe to it. I don't know, how does it actually make you feel better? How does it make you feel like you're worth more? How does it make you feel like this is healthy? How do you feel fulfilled and free in this environment? Truly, I don't understand that. It's like, I swear to God, they tend to be extremely pick me, and I'm not even always blaming them for it, because a lot of the times it's the people who raise them. But still, at some point, we have the power to kind of break out of that, and we have that power to be able to look around us and wonder, like, is this normal? Is this healthy? No, it's not. Purity culture is not normal. It is not healthy. It's not beneficial to women, and honestly, I don't even know how it's beneficial to men. I really don't, because even men who are in relationships with a woman who subscribes very harshly into purity culture, they're not even happy a lot of the times. A lot of the times, that does not save you from getting cheated on. That does not prevent him from wandering elsewhere. He's gonna want a girl who's super pure, like by marriage and whatever, but he's still gonna want to explore his options. So that's why, in my opinion, I just don't think that there's any part of it that is protective of you. I think that there's a difference between purity culture and then just being cautious as to who you engage with. I think that being careful of who you engage with obviously is so important. Hence why, even though I don't personally, I broke out of the whole purity culture thing, I still don't have like a ton of dating experience because I'm very picky with who I give my attention to. But I have learned, I have enough dating experience to recognize, are these patterns something that are healthy? Is this something that I actually want to put up with in a partner for the rest of my life? Or is this holding me back and is this making me unhappy? Trust me, I know it is uncomfortable and it's very hard to do, but if you want to get better, you kind of have to get worse. And what I mean by get worse is I mean mentally. Again, I think it is easier to stay living in this unhappy state. It's miserable, but at least it's easy and it's comforting than it is to face your demons and your traumas and the things that make you super unhappy and wonder, okay, well, how do I actually go about making a change? Can I change these aspects of my life, and what can I do to reprogram my mind? Reprogramming your mind is something that a lot of people really struggle with, and even me, it's not easy every single day. They're like, old things are gonna slip in, and that's okay. It's not perfection that we're after, it's just improving and getting better. So yeah, I want to hear other people's stories. I want to hear what other people have to say about this. Do you guys agree with what I'm saying? Do you guys relate to what I'm saying? If you do, I would love to hear it. And if you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about things like this, so this is your cup of tea. You're gonna like it here. So yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.